The whispering tombstones. The old cemetery on the outskirts of town had always been a place of curiosity for me. It was a desolate, forgotten place where the tombstones stood like silent sentinels in the moonlight. One night, I decided to explore it, a decision I would soon regret. As I walked among the tombstones, a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of being watched. I glanced around, but the cemetery was empty, or so I thought. Then, I heard it, the faintest whisper, like the rustling of leaves. I approached a weathered tombstone, and the whisper grew louder, more distinct. It was as if the very earth beneath me was speaking. I knelt down and placed my ear against the cold stone, and the words became clear. "Release me," the voice whispered, filled with desperation. "Release me from this wretched place." I recoiled in horror, realizing that the voice was coming from the tombstone itself. It was the voice of a trapped soul, a spirit condemned to the grave. Without thinking, I began to dig, my hands clawing at the dirt. As I unearthed the coffin beneath, the whisper grew stronger, more frantic. I pried open the lid, and a spectral figure rose from within, its eyes filled with gratitude. But as the figure reached out to touch me, its form twisted and contorted, revealing a nightmarish visage. Its gratitude turned to malevolence, and it lunged at me, its fingers like ice. I screamed and stumbled back, narrowly escaping its grasp. The figure sank back into the open grave, its laughter echoing through the cemetery. I ran from the cemetery, my heart pounding with terror. I had released something from the grave, something that should have remained buried. The memory of the whispering tombstones still haunts me, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in forgotten places. The curse of the forgotten. The cemetery on the hill had always been a place of reverence. In our small town, a final resting place for generations of families. But there was one grave that was never visited, one tombstone that was always shrouded in darkness, the grave of the forgotten child. As the story went, a child had died under mysterious circumstances, and their grave was cursed. Anyone who dared to visit it would suffer a terrible fate. The warnings didn't deter me. Curiosity got the better of me one moonless night. I stood before the forgotten child's grave, the air growing colder with each step. The tombstone was weathered and cracked, the name barely visible. I knelt down and whispered a prayer, ignoring the tales of the curse. Suddenly, a gust of wind extinguished my candle, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I realized I was not alone. I heard the soft laughter of a child, a voice that sent shivers down my spine. I fumbled for my flashlight and turned it on, illuminating the grave. There, standing before me, was a child with pale skin and empty eyes, their clothing tattered and stained. They reached out to me, their fingers like ice. "Play with me," the child whispered, their voice filled with longing. I tried to run, but an invisible force held me in place. The child's laughter grew louder, more menacing. They beckoned to me, and I felt a strange compulsion to obey. I joined the child in a nightmarish game, a twisted version of hide and seek in the cemetery. They moved with unnatural speed, always staying just out of reach, I stumbled through the darkness, my heart pounding with fear. As the game continued, I felt my strength waning, my energy draining away. The child's laughter turned into a chilling cackle, and I knew that I was being drawn into their curse. Just when I thought I couldn't go on, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The child let out a scream of frustration and vanished into the shadows. The curse was broken, and I was free. I stumbled away from the cemetery, shaken and terrified. I had encountered the forgotten child, a restless spirit trapped by a curse that should never have been disturbed. The memory of that night still haunts me, a chilling reminder of the price of curiosity. The haunting melody. The old cemetery in our town was known for its peaceful tranquility, a place where loved ones came to pay their respects. But there was one grave that stood out, a mausoleum with an elaborate, stone-carved angel on top, said to be the final resting place of a famous musician. It was rumored that on certain nights, the angel would weep tears of blood, and a haunting melody would fill the air. I had to see it for myself. One moonlit night, I ventured to the cemetery, drawn by the legend of the weeping angel. As I approached the mausoleum, I heard the soft, mournful strains of a violin. The melody was achingly beautiful, but there was something unsettling about it. I entered the mausoleum and saw her, a young woman with ebony hair, her eyes closed in ecstasy as she played the violin. Her fingers danced across the strings, producing a haunting, ethereal sound. I watched in awe as the music swirled around me, wrapping me in its enchantment. It was as if I had been transported to another world, a world where the boundary between the living and the dead was blurred. As the melody reached its climax, the woman opened her eyes, revealing empty sockets that stared into my soul. She smiled, her lips parting to reveal sharp, glistening teeth. The music took on a sinister tone, and I realized that I was not alone. Spectral figures emerged from the shadows, their eyes hollow and their faces contorted with agony. They reached out to me, their cold, skeletal hands grasping for my flesh. I tried to run, but the music held me in place. The figures closed in, their touch like ice. Screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the haunting melody. Hours passed, and the figures showed no mercy, their grip growing stronger. Default text. The music seemed to feed on their torment, growing more frenzied with each passing moment. Just when I thought I would be consumed by the spectral hod, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The music faltered, and the figures began to fade, their agonized cries echoing in the mausoleum. I stumbled out of the cemetery, my heart pounding with terror. I had encountered the weeping angel and the haunting melody, a chilling reminder that some legends held a darkness beyond imagination. The memory of that night still haunts me, a haunting melody that lingers in my nightmares.